It's so glad to be back in person. As much as I enjoyed Devcon online, there's nothing like seeing somebody in person. So, it's 2023, right? So we cannot start any talk without an obligatory reference to AI, okay? ChatGPT, okay, I said it. No. I'm not gonna talk about ChatGPT. But I will start off the talk with Google Bard, okay? So I came across this interview from 60 Minutes. So the guy name is Scott Pelley. Hope I'm pronouncing his name right. And he interviewed these two guys from Google. And Bard, at that point in time, was self-contained, not on the internet. It's a self-contained language model. Okay. And they did a quick test. And the quick test was, we're going to give 6 words, and we're going to have Bard complete the story. And the 6 words were for sale, baby shoes, never worn. And the guy was unsettled with the story that it generated. Here's the story, right? 5 seconds later, he says, holy cow. Bard created a deeply human tale with characters it invented, including a man whose wife could not conceive and a stranger grieving after a miscarriage and longing for closure. I'm rarely speechless. I don't know what to make of this. All right? The shoes were a gift for my wife, but we never had a baby. And they highlighted that. And it made him want to cry. There were tears in his eyes. I looked him up on Wikipedia. This is the first time I heard of him. I don't usually watch 60 Minutes. And he has one wife since 1983 with 2 children. So statistically, he's either mourning his own miscarriage or someone close to the family. It hit him hard on this interview. And then they said, hey, generate this in poetic form. Boom, 5 seconds later, here it is in poetry. I actually read this last night a few times, and I was like, wow. I usually read poems, and I don't like poems. I read this poem, was like, I like this poem. You know, it hit my soul. And the thing was, she knew her baby's soul would always be alive, right? And how could Bard generate this? I remember as a kid, there was a game called Mad Libs. You would just substitute a verb or a noun. It would be random, and it'd be hilarious. We'd laugh. It's like a random word generator, but it never made any sense. So how could AI now generate stories that make sense, that hit at the soul? How is that possible, right? And that's the point of, so the interviewer, Scott, asks the guys from Google. The guy answers, Bard read almost everything on the internet, and it created a model. It basically weighed stuff. And then he says, if you say peanut butter and, in English, you'd immediately follow with jelly, because that's the most common sequence of words, peanut butter and jelly, right? So it's just predicting, right? Now, Scott says it doesn't feel like that, right? It felt a lot more than that. But in reality, it's not sentient. He asked it. He asked the guys from Google, hey, is Bard sentient? No, it's not sentient. It doesn't really know or understand what it's saying, but it's taking frequency and patterns and then saying something. And then Scott asked Bard, why do you help, Bard? Why are you doing this? And Bard's reply was, because it makes me happy. Now, it doesn't really make it happy, but that's the most frequent response that we as humans give, so it's just predicting. Now, how can Bard do this, right? How can our stories be so predictable? This is Spider-Man into the multiverse, okay? So it's infinite, lots of multiverse, infinite universes, okay? But even in this story of infinite universes, there are heroes. And guess what? All those heroes have something in common. They were bit by a radioactive spider, hairdryer, or something. And they all lost someone. Okay, Penny Parker, that's the Japanese one there. Her father dies in the spider mech suit. And then she gets bit by the same spider and she takes over the spider mech suit. Gwen Stacy, she's Spider-Gwen. In her world, Peter Parker is Green Goblin. And guess what? He dies. And she feels guilty for it. The pig, Peter Porker, known as Peter Ham, his uncle, Frankfurter, dies. Okay? Miles Morales, his uncle, Aaron, the Prowler, dies. Peter Parker, the one we know that we grew up with, Uncle Ben dies. The other Peter Parker, Spider-Man Noir, his Uncle Ben dies. How is this so formulaic? And why do we like it? Right? There's a guy named Joseph Campbell. He wrote a book in 1949, and he introduced the word monomyth. I'm not talking about monolithic or monorepo, but monomyth, more like monostory. And he basically says every good story in every culture, in every religion, is the same story. Okay? And George Lucas called him his Yoda. Okay? And this is a summary of that story. Every story starts off in an everyday normal setting. There's a call to adventure. There's a first threshold. There's a bunch of ordeals and trials. There's an abyss. There's a death and rebirth. Then you go back and you return to society. And from that, you get every story. Okay. I got this from at B. Oppenheimer, April 7th on Twitter. So credit goes to him. So this guy here is Chris Vogler. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong because I just read, I don't listen. He wrote Lion King. It was an enormous commercial success. Disney made a ton of money. But between 1970 and 1988, Disney was in big trouble. They made movies, and people didn't want to watch them. Okay? It was known as Disney's dark age. And Chris Vogler saw Star Wars, and he was convinced that George Lucas basically ripped off of Joseph Campbell's A Hero with a Thousand Faces. And he condensed that book into a 7-page memo. Okay? And he's basically, from now on, all Disney movies is going to follow this. And they did. And people watched it and liked it. Here's another one. This is from @Bertram. Okay? He teaches a class at USC in California called Film Industry and Synergy. So right here is Star Wars, A New Hope, right? Luke Skywalker's an orphan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You just replace the word Luke with the word Harry, okay? You just replace the word aliens with Muggles, Tatooine with Suburbia, Obi-Wan Kenobi with Hagrid. You see that, right? Instead of Jedi Knight, it's a wizard. Instead of a best pilot, he's that player in that game on a broom, okay? And he's also instructed to use his lightsaber. Instead of lightsaber, it's a magic wand. It's the exact same story, right? And then, instead of Darth Vader, it's Lord Voldemort. And instead of killing his parents, they killed his uncle and aunt. And then the funny thing is that all of this ends with music by John Williams, which is the same guy. And if you guys have been paying attention with AI for music generation, there's, instead of Oasis, that UK band, there's AISIS. There's that, Heart on My Sleeve song, right? But that guy named Drake, okay? I was listening to it last night. I don't like that type of music. But AI's been generating music. So there's something about stories that are extremely patternable. So the question is, why is this so universal? Why is this the way? Why can AI pick up on these patterns, replace certain words, have context, and generate stories that hit at our soul? Okay? I mean, maybe there's a guy named Craig Venter. He was part of the Genome Project, and he basically said, we're all essentially identical twins. Right? And there's another Harvard study that says, I could pick two white guys here, and I may be more genetically similar to those two white guys than those two white guys are to each other. Okay? But that's not the point of this talk. The point of this talk is not for me to tell you why this is the case. The point of this talk is to simply say that it is the case, and it's observable. It's factual. Now, I'd be happy to talk to anyone after this talk. Please come up to me, and I'll give you my ideas for why I believe it's the case. It's an open invitation. Okay, so if it is so universal, I kept thinking to myself, does it apply to more things than just a story? But then I thought, in reality, everything is a story. So I looked it up. I Googled this. Joseph Campbell's A Hero's Journey for Agile Transformation. Oh, wow. People apply this. Would agile transformation be project management? I guess so, right? Something like that. So, and then I found that people apply this to therapy, to psychology. They started applying this hero's journey to everything. And I thought, I wonder if it applies to companies. Boom, Forbes had one. How to tell your company's story, right? And it basically talks about Joseph Campbell. And then I thought to myself, where is Liferay in its 20-year journey? 20 years of nerding it and counting. Where are we in Joseph Campbell's story? So I'm going to talk about our call to adventure, because that's how every story starts. And our adventure was to build a company with no venture capital to positively impact the world beyond money, right? And the reality is, I hesitated to even start Liferay as a company, okay? I didn't really want to do it, okay? So why did I open source it? I found that the code that I had written, that I'd spent years writing, nobody wanted it. And somebody offered me $10,000. That $10,000 I calculated was the equivalent of working at McDonald's. I'm like, forget this, I'll just give it away for free. So we just open sourced it that way. I didn't plan it. How did it become a business? I didn't want to start a business. People ask me, do you want to start a business? I'm like, no, I'm risk averse. But I was let go from my job during the dot-com bust. So I had no choice. I had to start a business. And by God's grace, I was let go from my job. We had this open source thing, people wanted to use it, and we had client after client. Okay, so that was our thing. And then once you have the call to adventure, you have your ordeals. We've had so many ordeals, it'd be impossible for me to list them all out. But here are a few that I thought of just in the last few days that I want to publicly share. When we had $300,000 in revenue, there was another company with 8 figures in revenue. Okay, we only had $300,000 in revenue. They flew us over, so like 4 or 5 of us, and they offered and said, Brian, we're going to buy Liferay, and here it is. Here's the money. And I sat down and I said, what if we don't sell it to you? They looked at us and said, there will be blood. And I'm like, we're like 4 or 5 guys. They have like over 100 guys, tons of revenue, VC backed, like well-known name. I'm like, what do we do? What do we do? We're shaking. We're scared. And we were fine. We said no. We're like, no, we're gonna go through this. We're gonna battle you guys, and we destroyed them. Okay. This is from Star Wars. You remember the scene? Qui-Gon and Jar Jar and Obi-Wan are in a boat. Okay, and there's a big fish chasing them. So around that time, people weren't sure if Liferay was enterprise ready. Okay. So, but Sun Microsystems forked us. Okay. They forked us, and we thought, hey, they're not going to try to support Liferay without us. Maybe they'll pay us something while they try to sell support. So it made us enterprise ready because Sun forked us, but they weren't willing to pay us a dime. So we had the name, but no money from it, and all these enterprise clients that wanted to use Liferay said, hey, if I want support, I can trust this company that has no history, but they made the product, or trust this big company that has 24/7 support, thousands and thousands of employees. So they suddenly started getting millions of dollars in support contracts while we got nothing. And we're like, this is going to stunt our growth. We're going to be screwed. We were so scared. We didn't know what to do. But as Qui-Gon says, there's always a bigger fish. Oracle came, swallowed up Sun, and because Oracle already had 4 of the portals, they didn't care. That's how we passed that ordeal. So I always remember that scene. This is another one. I call this saved by our tithe. Tithe is like 10%. So since the beginning, we've been giving 10% of our profits to charity and to our foundation. And I can't give you guys a background of what happened here, but at one point in time, we were stuck in a corner. Legally, we were bound to sell a large chunk of Liferay to a venture capital. It would have gutted our soul. Okay, and I fought it hard. And we talked to lawyers, we looked at everything, they read every contract, says, nope, you have no choice. You got to sell it to them. I'm walking down the street with Karis, I said, well, I guess this is it. We got to transition and figure out how to do this next step. And after they reviewed our money, they said, hey, there's this huge amount of money that went to this nonprofit for philanthropy. We need to audit those books. We're like, well, you have to talk to that organization. You have no authority. I mean, it's not us. We gave that money away. And because of compliance reasons, they had to audit it, and because they didn't have the right to audit it, they couldn't buy it. So our independence was saved by our tithe that we'd been giving for years. Here's another one, open source versus cloud. Open source was the cool kid on the block 20 years ago. Right? And then came cloud. And they're both means of distributing software, right? And it's a shock for us when you're doing one type of thing and then the world is shifting, right? So what did we have to do in order to battle this ordeal? We had to become open source and cloud. It's not versus cloud or cloud, it's and cloud, which is why today we have LXC on-premise, right? We have LXC self-managed, and we have LXC Pure, which is LXC SaaS, right? Another one is Java versus JavaScript. When I first started, the server side was the thing, okay? Front-end developers were looked down upon, okay? That's true. That was the case at one point. And about 10 years ago, we had to make a shift, and we went from 6.2 to 7.0. While everyone was moving towards front-end tech, we basically made, and it was the right technical decision, okay? It was the wrong marketing decision, okay? We doubled down and we went from Java, which I would say is algebra, to OSGI, which is like, not pre-calc, but like, and not calculus, but like calculus BC, not calculus AB, okay? Even today, when I code OSGI, I'm like, what is this annotation do? I don't understand all this wiring. And I have to Slack Ray, hey, what is this? And he explains it to me. Somehow he understands it, okay? And we made that painful mistake, and it costs us dearly in popularity, okay? So what is our way of combating that? We've moved from Java versus JavaScript to Java and JavaScript. You can see this in the way we're doing client extensions now, right? And the way we're modularizing things now. Okay, and then here's another one, Metal.js versus React. We shot ourselves in the foot here, okay, in this ordeal. This was a self-inflicted pain. We took the wrong turn. I would describe this as, again, a technologically right decision where Metal.js was superior, but it doesn't matter. The world was moving toward React, right? And we can't fight waves. We have to surf waves. Don't fight them, right? So we wrote Metal.js. It was way too complicated. We wrote a bunch of stuff, and we had spent years rewriting in React. And today, the way we deal with it with client extensions is React, Vue, Angular, we don't care. BYOFF, bring your own front-end framework. I don't know if that exists. I just wrote that down, okay? So we're just agnostic now. That's our way of fighting that. Monolith versus microservices. We kept saying, guys, you don't want that type of distributed microservice because there's latency. What you want is you want microservices within a monolith. And in VM, OSGI-based microservices, okay? But guess what? The world didn't move that way. The world moved towards distributed microservices, right? So what's our answer now? Monolith and microservices. You guys see a pattern here, right, guys? Okay? I'm almost as good as ChatGPT here, okay? No, this was not generated. And I did try using ChatGPT to generate this because I was lazy, but I was like, man, this session sucks. I got to write this by hand. Okay, Okay, you guys get it. So now we have monolith, which is within Liferay, we have thousands and thousands of, I think it's like tens of thousands of services, all in VM, super rapid. But if you have some kind of document translation or something that's CPU intensive, go ahead and put that as a client extension. Okay? So we have distributed microservices and in VM microservices. And I thought it was very, very cool that just this past week, Amazon, the poster child of microservices, okay, Prime Video, said they ditched serverless and their distributed microservice architecture for a monolith for Prime Video, and they saved 90% of their AWS cost. Okay, you guys can Google that on your own. So it basically means there's room for both. Okay, guys? All right. Another one was slowing business growth. Just like when you're a kid, you're 10, you're about to hit your growth spurt, you can eat as much as you want, and you're not going to get out of shape. But if you keep eating that way, when you're 25, 35, you're going to get bigger. So we've had to learn how to make disciplined business decisions that we didn't have to make before when we were in puberty, and now we're a mature adult. But those decisions were ridiculously painful. Internal politics. Bezos says, "You've worn me down is an awful decision-making process. It's slow and de-energizing. Go for quick escalation instead." But guess what? That was Liferay's decision-making process for 10 years. I watched folks whom I loved argue with each other for hours, not come to a conclusion, and afterwards they went off their separate paths, built their own fiefdoms within Liferay that didn't talk to each other. I don't let that happen anymore. I don't let that type of bitterness foster for years. I see disagreement now, I just go, okay, let me hear both sides. I'm deciding, it's bubbling up to me, I've decided, we're done, we're moving forward. And I kill that type of internal politics. The Great Resignation. We had so many people quit during COVID because they were locked up in a room and they just needed an outlet to do something different. But the hard part wasn't even the business impact, right? With people who had been at Liferay for 10 plus years. The hard part was the emotional impact. I've been friends with them for years, and I'm still friends with them, but it's not the same because I don't hang out with them, every week. I don't see them in Porto. Gartner MQ. For 10 plus years, we were the leader in the Portal space. But now it's like we're playing rugby, and suddenly we're playing American football. And then American football suddenly turns into soccer. Wait, that's European football. Okay. So it's a changing landscape. They're constantly redefining what a DXP is. So we go from being a leader to not being a leader and having to rebuild again. That's tough. These are tough challenges. Product management was an ivory tower. I remember seeing one time there was an LPS ticket for 2 years where tons of people were asking for the ability to upload binary files anonymously. And product management kept saying, nope, 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 useless, useless, useless. And many of our customers were re-implementing and sending patches to us. And product managers kept ignoring it. We rebooted product management. We listen to our customers now. We dog food. We have frequent releases. And our velocity is much, much higher now than it's ever been. Product defects, right? Liferay's got bugs, okay? Here's one. DL file entry preview document DPI in Portal Properties, 300 DPI. What that means is when you upload a document, it's going to create an image of the pages of the document in 300 DPI. 300 DPI is print format. It's like you upload a JPEG, and we create a bitmap of that JPEG. So we had some production issues. We're like, why is there 100 gigs of this? And we trace this. We've since switched it to 75, which is the web format. And we looked at this. This has been here since 2011. It was LPS 5250. So that bug has been in there so long. Guess what? I guarantee you there will be more like this that we'll discover. And it's just part of the daily routine. It's almost as if our work's been cursed as some form of punishment. I don't know, man, but it sure feels that way. And then comes a section of death and rebirth. And for me, this section of death and rebirth is not just figurative, but it's kind of literal. Right around Devcon 2017, I remember talking to Eddie Dweck. For some reason, I was like, hey, you know what? I think I need to cancel my flight. I don't think I can make it this year. He's like, yeah, I don't think you should go either. Why don't we tape it instead? I taped it with my daughter, Galia. Her twin brother is actually here right now. And I thanked everybody. And she passed away a day before Devcon. So everyone at 2017 Devcon saw the video of me with her but it was delayed, right? And she had already passed away. And shortly after that, my father-in-law was diagnosed with stage 3, stage 4 lung cancer. And I remember having both of those things hit me. I was like, I don't know if I could work anymore. Like, I don't know if I can think straight. And I was just going through that death and rebirth process. And around the same time, we're about to launch Analytics Cloud. And I looked at the architecture. I was like, guys, this thing's a mess. You're not going to be able to run this in production. I canned the project. I rebooted it. I made them rewrite it in a much simpler format. In 1 month, we rewrote it. In 3 months, it went to production. And within 6 months, we had a foundation. And the weird thing was, every 6 months after that, there were one of these contractions. Like, I'm giving birth. Like, it was painful. It was like every 6 months. Documentation was so ugly, unhelpful. We rebooted that. Our headless APIs, we had this thing called Appio, which was so difficult to use. We switched that to REST Builder in 6 months. And then an app builder that we built, complete garbage, okay? And now Object is much, much better. We know, we release it, nobody uses it, it's garbage. We release it, tons of people use it, it's nice, right? We're not flies, right? We're not attracted to the garbage, we're attracted to the nice stuff. And during that time of the Great Resignation, we needed to move to Brazil because so many of our key talent in Brazil had left. And this is like July. So March was when the pandemic hit. July, I was like, okay, I need to go. November, like the peak of Delta, with no vaccine, we're like, okay, let's go visit. And my father-in-law had been steady for about 2-3 years. So I'm like, okay, we just got to go. We fly to Brazil. We land. A day or two later, he plummets, and he's about to die. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm stuck here in a foreign country, visiting. I made this call. If I don't get back in time, my wife will never forgive me. Okay? We prayed. We flew back. He was fine. And then he died a few days later. He held on for those few days for us. We buried him within a few weeks, and we moved our family to Brazil, and we were reborn. Okay? Our kids are more Brazilian than American now. They all speak Portuguese. They even make these Brazilian moves that I'm like, stop. don't dance like that. Don't move like that. So, where is Liferay now in its journey? Where is it now? This is a scene from Tom Cruise's Maverick, Top Gun Maverick. I assume most of you guys have watched this. And this is right after his mentor, Iceman, who was protecting him, died. Okay? I kind of look at Iceman kind of like Gartner. And I kind of look at Tom Cruise as a Java developer. And I kind of think of those young guys flying as like JavaScript developers, you know, like, yeah. Okay? And he's grounded. The new admiral says, nope, you're done, you're out. He goes, he talks to his muse, which is straight from that 12, whatever that Joseph Campbell thing. He talks to her. He's like, I'm done. I'm grounded. I don't have authority to fly the plane anymore. And she says to him, you got to find a way. Those are your pilots up there. If you were up there in the sky, wouldn't you find a way to defend them? You got to find out. He's like, it's impossible. It's an impossible task. And if it was an easy task, the story wouldn't be good. It had to be an impossible task. And right after that scene, you see them changing that 2-minute marker to 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And suddenly he comes in out of nowhere. And he's like, okay, I'm going to do that 2-minute thing. I'm going to prove it to them. This is the way I'm going to find the way. And I think that's where we are right now. Liferay as a company, as an ecosystem, and as a community. We're just about to start our 2-minute flight. It's going to be bumpy the next 2 years. But I believe with all my heart and soul that we're going to make it through that flight, and we're going to come out of it reborn, and we're going to fight once again. And Liferay will be useful, and it's going to be a company that's not backed by VC, that's going to contribute to society beyond money. And I would love it for all of you guys to join along for the ride. Welcome to Liferay Devcon 2023. It is so good to see everybody. Thank you.